Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar on the why and how of moving our e-learning to HTML. Good afternoon, morning to all our viewers from Australia and Asia. Thank you for being with us today. My name is Sanjay and I'm a marketing executive at Upside Learning. I'm going to be doing a quick introduction before we get on with the webinar. There's just a few housekeeping things I have to go over. You will be receiving the recording of the webinar via an email. We have some polls lined up for you during the course of the webinar, so please do participate. And feel free to ask any questions from our experts using the chat facility. Now just a bit about the company, Upside Learning. For 10 years, we've been helping organizations of different sizes and types to improve performance through better learning. With our head office in India, we serve clients based in the UK, USA, Australia, Middle East, and other countries. A wide range of innovative learning solutions include Upside LMS, a best value multi-award winning responsive learning management system, custom e-learning, and custom M-learning. We have been recognized and awarded by Brandon Hall, Training Industry, Deloitte, CLO, Apex, Red Herring, and I won the award for e-learning team of the year for 2013 by eLearning Age Awards. Alright then, so let's begin with the webinar, shall we? It is my pleasure to introduce to you the speaker, Jeevan Joshi, the Director of Client Solutions of Asia Pacific for Upside Learning. Jeevan, the stage is yours.
Hello everyone, this is Jeevan here. Before I begin, I just want to make sure that you can actually, the voice is coming through nicely for all of you. So if you can just raise your hands, just a show of hands through the panel. That's fantastic. Thanks, Gary. So look, yep, that's all good. Thanks everyone. So it looks like the voice is coming through, just checking the quality. So yes, my name is Jeevan Joshi, and I'm based in Sydney and been working in e-learning for about close to 22 years now. So also see a couple of familiar names in the audience like David Rossiter, whom I've worked with before. So I hope that you really do enjoy this particular webinar, which is on a very, very practical topic on converting online learning from the world of Flash to the new shiny world of HTML5. And we will explore as we go exactly what is HTML5 and is the transition from Flash to HTML5 smooth, or is it full of bumps, or indeed there are some cliffs and mountains along the way. This is going to be a very interactive session, so there are ways of contributing to the session through either chat, so if you can raise any questions through the question panel. The Upside team will also be sending links across and relevant information to different blogs that we have written on our website. So without much further ado, as Sanjay said, let's begin. So let's do a quick poll, and the first poll is how many have moved your e-learning development to HTML5? So there should be a poll which should be coming up very soon on your screen. So if you can just respond to the poll, that'll be fantastic. Will just give me a sense of exactly what's the prevalence of HTML being used for e-learning development. So just waiting for some responses to come through. So just wait for a couple of more minutes. Yeah, so this is, as we talk to a lot of customers, not just in Australia, but also all across Asia. We do come across people who are talking to us about HTML. So if you just share the poll results, you can see that most people have not moved to HTML5, which means that that is probably a good webinar to attend in that case, because we will be talking about the nuts and bolts of moving from Flash to HTML. So thank you for sharing the poll results. Okay, so I think we'll just have kind of another question, just to kind of confirm that the rest of you are kind of creating e-learning in Flash. So if I can just have another show of hands very quickly, that'll be fantastic. And just give me a sense. Okay, already. So look, the numbers are coming through, and we can close the poll, and it's pretty much quite similar to what we had previously. So most people are developing in Flash, and some people obviously are neither developing in Flash nor HTML, so maybe they're just starting on the e-learning journey, or don't actually develop e-learning courses. So either way, looks like the majority of you still are developing in Flash as a tool. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so let's. The first question is why HTML? I'm just wondering if I'm just going to, through chat, I'm just going to raise a question and ask the question as to, why do you think that Flash is going away on to HTML5? So why HTML5? You could, type your responses to that, your views. That'll be fantastic. We'll just get that included. So why HTML? All right. So I'm going to present some reasons as to why the world is moving to HTML, and if you've got any other insights or anything else that you can think of, please do type it in. The first reason, and probably the most the reason why it gathered a lot of momentum was thanks to this gentleman on the screen. I'm sure most of you realize that even though he's kind of hiding his face with his hand, it's Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs really was a person who first, I guess the first big business personality to come and declare why Flash should go away. And there's a link which we'll also kind of send to you or post it in the chat where he has explained the reason as to why Flash really isn't appropriate anymore. And it's quite quite interesting to read that piece, and it was it was quite a lucid and a well developed argument about why that should be the case. So the link is coming to you now. Yep. So if you can, when you have time to read that. But essentially, what Steve Jobs said, and since that it's kind of been proven right, like a lot of things that Steve Jobs has done, is that Flash really was created during the PC era, right? So it was extensively used, and that's why a lot of our e-learning is in Flash. It obviously was a very, very good solution and a tool, which is why it was the technology that predominated e-learning development. But the mobile, we're moving into the world of mobile, so I'm sure all of you have multiple mobile devices, and what's happening is that our consumption of the internet is moving away from, or productivity or work is moving away from it's moving away from devices to smartphone and tablets. Right. So if you can, if you can just kind of recollect the time that we were just sitting in front of a PC using a mouse to now, when at least personally I use my iPhone, iPad. I also have an Android tablet along with my laptop. So I've got four or five devices of different sizes that I access information through, and that's why we've made a massive move towards mobile. So what there was a need for this new mobile world was to create open standards, and this is, and as you're aware, that Flash is actually proprietary to Adobe. So what Steve Jobs was advocating was standards which are mobile friendly and are also open, right, which will work just not on mobile devices or PC. So that really kind of put the stake in the ground, and since then that trend has accelerated. As you're aware, that Apple products don't actually support Flash. That and a large part of the market, and sometimes a lot of influential learners and users do use iPad mobile devices like iPhone, right? So there is a significant number of influential users who are on Apple mobile devices, which doesn't play Flash, right? So that we certainly accelerated the move. So what is Flash? And Flash was, a proprietary tool from Adobe, and now we're moving to HTML. So what is HTML then? HTML is really, in a very technical sense, is our new open standards based on XML and they are a combination of HTML5 and CSS3 and JavaScript. So for those who recognize the technology behind it, basically HTML5 is the code that displays on the browser. CSS are I guess the component that defines the theme and the look and feel of what you see on a web page. And JavaScript allows you to have interactivities and picks up data from the backend, etc. So that's kind of the data intensive and interaction intensive parts. It's a combination of all three which have combined what is called HTML5. So why HTML5 is becoming popular is because they actually don't require plugins. So if you remember, for Flash, you do require a Flash plugin in browsers, and they need to be updated every time Flash upgrades that. Now, the plugins also present a problem, which is that it makes it difficult for learners who are behind firewalls to download Flash. To be honest, that is not so much of a problem because just about every firewall now allows Flash to be played, but it still is a problem. We also have better support for audio and video. So we're certainly, just in terms of displaying audio and video, there's much better compatibility, much better display of 2D and 3D graphics, although there is a trade-off in terms of the amount of interactivity that we can build in HTML at this current point in time with the current tool sets. So it's still not perfect, so it does create a few issues that we come across and our customers do come across. It does have, combined with the newer versions of browsers like Chrome, Firefox, and the latest Internet Explorer browsers, it actually does allow some offline storage of content. It's not huge. I think it's around 10 MB, but essentially it is allowing some of the content to be stored online in the browser. So if you access a page and there's some content that is downloaded, it actually you can then use it in an offline mode even if you're not connected to the internet. Second is kind of hardware access. So the Flash 5 allows much in a much more fluent and a much more organized way to access some of your hardware features on your mobile phone or tablets, which is audio, which is cameras. So it allows much closer integration. As you're aware that we're kind of moving more towards the 70-20 learning, 10 learning, in which we kind of expect learners to generate content. So imagine that if learners wanted to record their insights into the latest workshop that they had attended, they could potentially do that much better with using the HTML5 and then use it as a learning experience. So why should you consider moving to HTML5? A couple of reasons, but before we do that, before we go there, just want to make sure that we all understand that. And look, we've just got some comments from the audience which I'll just cover. David kind of mentioned that portability as a reason to move to HTML5, and we'll cover that. And Nabanita mentions that because you're moving to an anywhere, anytime learning. I think that's a great point. Simply because that's where we want our learning to be, and the Flash and the PC world doesn't support that model very well. We're not walking around with PCs. But just in terms of another comment from David says IE8 and below are not supported. Very true, and which is why we've actually built something which does support, which is a combination of HTML4.5, which does support IE8, and we've actually had a couple of customers recently sign up. They are also they weren't really considering IE8, but they've discovered that parts of the business has IE8, and which is why they have certainly gone with the HTML4.5 combination. Okay, so just in terms of one of the factors which is increasing is what I think Nabanita has mentioned, and David, of course, is portability and also the BYOD. Essentially, I'm not sure if it's the same in your business, but we're moving to a trend where the employees and therefore the learners are allowed to bring their own devices, right, and which then plugs into the corporate network, right. What this means is that while companies can recommend, there is very little possibility of dictating what devices users should buy or should use. So that's quite interesting, because that means that anybody could essentially walk in with any device of different screen sizes, different operating systems. We know there are 4 different operating systems: iOS, Android, Windows, and BlackBerry still around. And if you can imagine the number of screen sizes, right? So PC, 10-inch, 7-inch, smartphone, large, small. You multiply those combinations, the variances are huge, right? So essentially, what that means is that Flash won't play on Apple in the first place. Plays with actually great difficulty or not at all on Android, which means that if you're going BYOD, you have to cater for all those devices, and that means you don't really have an option except go HTML5, right? So a lot of our customers are coming to us now and talking to us about converting Flash to HTML, which is covered in the other slides. The other factor really is the legacy courses, which were kind of built using the different kind of tools, and you can see on the screen, and you can see some screenshots of some courses developed by Flash, by us. But essentially, we're using tools like Captivate, Articulate, Lectura to produce to produce Flash, and there's a lot of you need to really kind of future-proof those courses. So I think it's a major problem for our profession, where we've invested a lot in Flash, and we had to. That was the way to go. But we are coming to a very critical point in the way that we architect our e-learning infrastructure, and that is that really needs to be future-proof. So since the past 24 months, last 2 years, the new courses that we've been building for customers, we always asking them the question, do you want it in Flash or do you want to build in HTML5, because that's going to future-proof your course for next foreseeable future. What do you want to build it in, even though building in HTML is a little bit more costly, and I'll explain the reason why. But look, I don't think there's been any customer who we've signed up in the last 24 months who has gone Flash. They've all gone HTML, right? Now, some of the tools like Articulate and Captivate have now started producing outputs for HTML, so that is also picking up. But we just need to be cognizant that the outputs aren't perfect. There are some niggles here and there which do require some skills. So the other thing that when you're kind of moving into an HTML5 platform is that you're actually kind of getting ready for a couple of other things that are also going to hit us very soon. First is the concept that you're kind of viewing courses as resources, right? So they're really not not to be seen as a one-hour course, but a resource for safety, a resource for improving soft skills, a resource for learning about a new equipment. Right, so it's again kind of moving into the 70-20-10 model, because this content is going to be accessed more possibly through phones, which means that people are not looking to do courses for 1 hour, click next kind of a course. They're looking for short, punchy information, and that's why that's the view of moving it to resources. The other one, of course, the really big thing to hit are, I'm starting to struggle with the term, what to call it, but XAPI is going to redefine the way that learning is done in organizations. So XAPI, or better known as Tin Can, but I think XAPI is a more accurate term, is the next standards up from SCORM 1.2 and 2004, but it does a lot more. So I just want to check how many people have actually heard of Tin Can or XAPI. If you could just raise your hands, that'll be fantastic. It'll just tell me how much time I should be spending on Tin Can and XAPI, because it's an extremely important thing that's going to hit us very soon. So we've got half the half the audience who've raised their hands. For the other half, actually, because it is quite complex and quite there's quite a bit involved. I think it would be really benefit if everybody could actually spend time on understanding what XAPI or TinCan does. But essentially, in a nutshell, what it allows is that it does allow your traditional online learning to be put on LMSs and tracked, but it also allows any kind of learning done anywhere to be tracked, right, or made available. So you can imagine that if you've designed a course which requires you to do a 30-minute online module, then go on to Facebook and look up some resources, or post on a discussion, then go to YouTube, watch a YouTube video on Salman Khan, for example, or then go off to the local internet or SharePoint site and pick some resources. That learning experience is potentially, well, it can be tracked by XAPI, which means that you will know, who's done what. So you can now have a holistic view of what learning is being done, formal, informal, and that's a very powerful tool. But we still have some way to go to implement that. I think we're still in SCORM 1.2 and SCORM 2004 world, but that's coming very soon. It's going to have major implications on the way that we design learning. Also, wearables is coming up. So you must have heard of the latest release of the Apple Watch by Apple, and we're starting on the journey where, in addition to the three devices that you see, there's also going to be a fourth one, which is wearable devices. And watch is probably the least revolutionary of all wearable devices. There's you've even got kind of screens attached to the skin, maybe something that you wear, visors over your, to give you an immersive experience. So that's all this coming along, and I guess by starting to build an HTML5, you're getting ready for that. Okay, so and how to make the move to HTML. But before I go there, I do want to say that there are a couple of caveats of moving to HTML. Is to understand that it's not a silver bullet at this point in time with the current set of tools. It is still an evolving field, evolving standard, and may not be appropriate for all situations. Like David mentioned, that if your organization's on IE8, just building an HTML5 is not going to work, because IE8 doesn't support HTML5, in which case you'll have to do a combination of HTML4 and 5, and you can see that increases complexity. But the hope is that IE8 will die out, and it should have already, because Microsoft have already stopped support for it. But it's still embedded within some organizations. So fingers crossed for all of us that we kind of get rid of the older browsers. But it's not perfect. The couple of challenges are that the first one is that the amount of interactivity that you can build in Flash is extremely difficult to be replicated in HTML5 and requires a lot of technical skills, right? So it's almost a trade-off to move to HTML5 is to build the same amount of interactivity. It's going to be more expensive, will take more time, and sometimes just not possible. Right, so you just need to be conscious of that. That's one thing. Secondly, is that even though I kind of mentioned that it's a standard HTML5 is standard accepted by everyone, but the different browsers don't support all features of HTML5, and we've got a slide on that. So the three different approaches that we know of in terms of moving from Flash to HTML is MEnablement, responsive, and responsive app-based. So MEnablement is essentially taking the current Flash content and then modifying it to the best possible way to make it enabled. So i.e. the example is that instead where you click, you just make the course to swipe, right? So where you could click with the mouse, now it requires to be replaced with a swipe action, because it's being accessed through smartphones and through tablets. So that is one example of how existing courses could be enabled, right? By using existing resources, etc. So obviously, the more reinvention you have to do, the more time and money it costs. So I guess it's a strategic decision as to how much of your content do you want to actually move to HTML. Maybe there are some old courses which are not relevant and not really worth the cost of redeveloping in HTML. In HTML. In which case, you might just want to build a course ground up using the responsive response. So responsive is interesting concept, and let me just kind of very quickly show you what responsive means. Essentially, it means that the content optimizes for the different screen size. So I'll give you an example of that. And finally is the responsive app-based, which means that the content is then shown in an app which sits on your, for example, iPhone, right? So if we just look at some of the things that we need to consider for for the first one, which is enablement, which is kind of review and redefine the objectives, and this should be done with your budget in mind, right? So there's only limited budget to do things, and you just need to identify which courses are high priority, which probably have a longer lifespan, which is important content, and then kind of prioritize the amount of budget you have, or which courses need to be enabled using that criteria, right? It is highly unlikely that anybody has all the money to convert all Flash courses into HTML. I wish that was the case. It would be good for vendors like us, but the reality is that there isn't. So you have to pick and choose as to what and how much you're going to convert from Flash to HTML. Also, you identify the tools used for development. This is quite important because at this point in time, there is no perfect e-learning development tool. Right, neither Articulate nor Captivate, kind of give you exactly a seamlessly playing course. So David is talking about no Flash converter. Is there a Flash converter? Yes, there are, but no, it doesn't work the way it should. And to be honest, even using Articulate, for example, Articulate does produce content for iPad, but then you need the Articulate app to play it, right? So it's almost like to play it well, and you need the latest, or if it does, it plays only in Chrome and not the other browsers. So there are, and we've got a slide on that. So you just need to be aware. You kind of need to go into the details, nitty-gritty of exactly what is supported by what kind of browser. And also identify the reusable assets, and this is quite important because you obviously want to reuse as much as possible, because by doing that you're saving money, because these assets don't have to be recreated, they don't have to be tested, and you don't need instructional design storyboard for them. So as far as possible, to use the assets. The next approach is the responsive. So responsive is actually quite a different approach to developing a course, and we are actually building a lot of responsive courses now, and the instructional design storyboard looks a lot different to your traditional storyboard. Essentially what responsive is that the content, it does, and I'll try and show you one that we have as soon as the browser opens up, but essentially it optimizes according to the browser size. So if you can, I'm going to type in address. So we got http bit.ly. Okay, so I'm just sending you this link. If you want to actually, if you just actually want to go and click this link, there are a couple of, there's one course, and if you open it and then what you do is kind of just change your browser size, you will see that the course optimizes according to the browser size. So if you can see that, so I'll just show you the screen size. Okay, so hopefully that'll come across. So let's look at a course, responsive course for information security. Right? Okay. So hopefully you can see the browser. Right? So I'm going to view the demo. Now this is actually built using our proprietary FRED framework, which is Framework for Responsive E-Learning Development, and we've done that because we haven't found a tool that actually produces or takes care of all the issues. So if you kind of go here, you can see that this size I can changing, revealing, or destroying your data, and that's exactly what information security is about. Right, so do you see that this is like a PC size, tablet size, it's reoriented itself, and then on smartphone you can see that it's been clever enough to actually remove the images, right, because you don't have that much space in smartphones. And you can also see the menu. The menu is gone at the bottom for the PC. On tablets it goes up, smartphone also it stays up, right. The navigation has changed, right, so if you go to the next screen, so this is what I'm talking about responsive, is that it responds to the screen size. So just go to the next one, and you can see that, you know, some of the interactivities again. There you go. Right. So that's about the responsive learning, and you can see that it requires kind of very careful consideration of design and layout. You need to chunk the content into short nuggets, because the intention is, if it is to be played on smartphones, they need to be short. You know, I don't think people like spending 1 hour doing a 1 hour course on smartphones. Apply touch mouse. So which big difference is that when you had the mouse, you could move and click, but now it's mouse over or swipe, right? So that's a big change in design. Convert animations to GIF videos or sprite sheets, so that, you know, it plays. So that's another aspect of the conversion. And recode interactivities using jQuery, right? So this actually requires a little bit of some of the more common ones are already built into, you know, the Captivate and Articulate. They'll do it well, but the more complex one actually requires a little bit of coding. And you know, finally, the tools that do produce HTML5 output is Articulate, Storyline, Captivate, Lectora, but they do have some deficiency in some shape and form, and you just need to be aware that it's not perfect. I am sure they will get there, because this is their main line of business. Not too sure when they'll get there. So there is a period when you know, we probably don't have a perfect solution. Okay, so what are the challenges? As David mentioned, lower IE versions are not supported. Therefore, use a combination of HTML4.5, and that takes care of it. Also use Flash as a fallback, so which means that you're kind of creating an HTML4.5 course, but you also have a Flash component just in case, you know, HTML4 or 5 doesn't play, right? If it's an older browser or some issue, at least, you know, then you can have Flash. It's almost like you've almost got 2 versions of the course, one is HTML4 plus 5, and also Flash. Same course, but you know, requires all the assets. An important thing to remember is that LMS also needs to be tablet compatible. So, you know, if, for example, our latest version of the LMS is tablet compatible or responsive, so it changes size according to the device you're accessing. But some of the more current LMSs are not, which means that you actually have to scroll. You know, the scroll appears. It doesn't nicely optimize to the screen size. That's another consideration. And also browser variants in HTML5. And what I mean by that is a slide coming up next. And if you kind of observe carefully, here are the browser variants for HTML5 on a desktop. As you can see, you kind of all the browsers, i.e. it pretty much doesn't support any of, you know, not much of the HTML5 standards, right? IE9 is slightly better. IE11, right? Even that has, you know, kind of doesn't support 2 features and partially supports 4 features, right? Even the other browsers, which are more, I guess, open source, Firefox, Chrome, you know, Opera, Mac, you can see that there are some features that are supported and some that are not. And this one's quite interesting, the device orientation events. What that means is that does the content, or, you know, optimize according to the orientation, whether it's landscape or portrait. So a lot of the times we actually have to specify to customers saying that, look, we're going to develop a course in HTML5, but you just need to be aware that it will only play in landscape mode and not portrait. Right, so if your users, so you just make it, make people aware of that, so that if they kind of flip the screen, they don't expect it to optimize accordingly. Right? So, you know, that's, and if you see for smartphone and tablets, again, there is a lot of variance in terms of the browser that are used on smartphones and tablets. Again, screen orientation is a bit of a deficiency at the moment, and also, you know, some of the other more important things like drag and drop. So if you've got drag and drop, you can see that IE10 supports it. The others don't at this point in time. So you just need to be, you know, kind of aware. And I think we should be able to. We'll have the recording available and slide pack if you want to refer to this. But it's a pretty useful chart. Some examples of MEnablement. So what we did is this was Flash-based content, and what we have done is we've actually converted that into a tablet. And for doing that, what we did was we actually created a custom HTML course player because they didn't want to spend, there was too much investment in Flash, and they didn't want to reinvest or reinvent the whole thing. So we actually created a custom HTML course player, and you can see the changes in the navigation. Right, you can see at the bottom chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 down here, and also the navigation is different from the other one. So yeah, so this is where we kind of looked at the existing course, the Flash course, and say, okay, we need to make as few changes as possible and get it playing on a tablet, right? And obviously this course is probably won't play very well at all on smartphones at all because it's not optimized for that. So, but it does play. So the thing to remember is that if you're designing for a 10-inch tablet, that plays pretty well on PCs too, right? So if you're designing a course, you might as well go and design for a 10-inch tablet because PC is a little bit bigger. So so go tablet 10 first, and that takes care of PC anyway. Animation and audio sync uses jQuery, which is one of the technologies. So you can see this is one of the courses that we developed using that. So rollover were converted to clicks, and yes. So the other for responsive, MEnablement is Vocalect. So this is our customer, which is a Honeywell company in the U.S., and we do a lot of work for them. As you can see, that their courses were converted into a tablet formed, and the videos were embedded in that. Snippets were published as videos in an HTML player. So Flash, which usually plays videos, that was got rid of because it wouldn't play. And again, you can see the LMS. They use our LMS, which is also responsive. But it's this whole whole idea about a different design. Moving on to responsive, you just saw an example of that. Again, important, think resources, not courses, because if your courses have to play with a smartphone, like I emphasized before, they need to be short and sweet. Complete redevelopment is required because the Flash courses, there's just so much work in terms of converting existing Flash that you might as well go and redevelop clean. Also gives you an opportunity to to optimize the content, because PC-based online learning allowed you to sit in front of a PC for an hour and do things, but I think on smartphones, tablets, people have got less time, less patient. So it's almost like you need to be very economical with your content and really recognize what is important. And for example, what content needs to be displayed on a smartphone? Not all, but which ones will we drop out? So that's something that the storyboard will look different. It's almost like you'll have 3 variations of storyboard: one for PC, one for tablets, the other one for smartphone. The other thing about a storyboard for responsive development is that it's a very evolving approach. And what I mean by that is almost impossible to develop a perfect storyboard and then start development. Because what happens is when you develop the storyboard and you kind of think about things, they keep changing, because something that works beautifully on a PC might not work well on a tablet, right? So you have to go back to the storyboard and take that into consideration. So just need to be aware that developing a storyboard is much more fluid in a responsive HTML5 development. Tools to use: Gomo is a new kid on the block, but they are obviously targeting this responsive learning. Captivate 8 at this point in time, and our own FRED, which is Framework for Responsive eLearning Development. I'll be happy to supply details of that. But again, none of them are perfect. There is some skills, additional skills required for that. Like I mentioned, challenges that tools are not yet involved, and there are some HTML skills required to fix a few things, right? There will be imperfections, even if you use Articulate and Captivate, and so you do require some amount of skills to do that. Testing becomes an issue. This is so let's talk about testing. So when you build a course for a PC, you test it for a PC, right? One round of testing, you're done. Now, if your course is going to be used across 4 different kind of operating systems and just 2 different screen size, not 3, let's say a PC and a tablet, that's 4 into 2, that's 8 times, right? So you have to almost test 8 times. So the testing becomes quite intensive, right? And as we all know, the testing is neither a very exciting activity to do and not a hugely value added. Obviously, the less you have to test, the better. But with HTML, you will have to, HTML5 you will, and responsive you will have to test more. And for that purpose, we've actually recognized that, and we've set up a testing lab in our company. And what we are happy to now test courses developed by anybody or by any tool. We've actually got a physical lab with experts who do the testing and give back a testing report, recognizing that you wouldn't want to spend your time in increased testing. So we've got, and the other thing to remember is for testing you actually need the physical devices, so you need Android Galaxy Tab and iPad Air and a PC and a Mac. So it does requires quite a lot of physical infrastructure. There are some simulators available, but again they don't give you perfect results. So it is going to become more complex. Like I said, need physical devices, require more effort and time, and therefore we have a point service open to anybody who wants us to test. We do that and send back a report with some analysis as to how it can be fixed. Talked about the fluid development process as compared to the one that used to be done for PCs. Other screenshots. Now this time again with Vocalect. So here is a responsive course. That's one course, but viewed across 3 different types of devices, 3 different screen size, it looks different, right? So you can kind of see that the kind of the navigation has changed, but the PC and the iPad are still very similar, but the smartphone is quite different, right? So navigation has gone on the top there, right? In some cases, this image may completely disappear, if it's not appropriate. Here's another one in terms of this is like I guess a scenario case study. Appears on PC. You can see that here it becomes a swipe, right? And on the smartphone, it actually changed orientation completely. So it looks very, very different from an iPad or a tablet or a PC, right? It's kind of gone vertical orientation. Using Fred, you've seen that example that you've seen is using Fred. You can see the orientation here from a PC, which is kind of horizontal. It's kind of rearranged into vertical. On a smartphone, it's actually this vertical 1, 2, 3, 4 have gone in and become 4 tabs. So you need to scroll through the 4 tabs. So that's an example of responsive. Here's another one in which the layout and the orientation is different. Some of the learning stuff that we've built using a comic book kind of an approach. Again, that's different. Finally, talk about the responsive app-based approach. This is essentially kind of a hybrid, approach, and what it means is that you actually install an app on your Android or an iPhone, right? And that brings in learning content, right? Now, what we need to be conscious is that again, think about the performance support aspect of it. So you don't want, again, 1-hour learning courses to be available, but chunked pieces which will help employees to do the job that they're doing and to learn what they need to learn at that point in time. The design is always mobile first, so when you're designing, you simply throw the PC out of your frame of reference and design mobile first, right? So you design for a 10-inch tablet, then it plays on PC okay anyway, right? But it's a different way of thinking. We are starting work for one of our customers next week, where they're going mobile first. It's the first time that they are going to design from mobile first approach, and it's going to be, I guess, a bit of a challenge for them to get used to it, and also for us to kind of educate them on the differences in the storyboarding style and approach for that. Offline availability, which means that potentially there is an opportunity to download content onto the smart device, so that even if there is no internet, they can still do the learning bit. So that's it's quite interesting, because if you were on a mining site remote with no connection, you could access course which you had downloaded earlier, right? But one of the things that we were discussing with the customers was exactly how much content do you want to download on your smartphone or on your tablet. If you're downloading videos, they could eat up a big chunk of your or if your storage on your phone, which means that you've got less space for music. So while offline availability does sound very exciting, the practical reality is that there is only 16 GB or 32 GB on a phone, and half of that maybe. So there's actually, when you look at it, the amount of space for offline storage might be limited in any case. So yes, so convert. So one of the options to that is to kind of convert apps to hybrid or native. What that means is that simply you kind of put an app-like wrapper around a website or an LMS, right? So it looks like an app, you click it, it opens like an app, but the moment it opens, it actually draws content from a website, right? So that's another approach which you could use. You could also use LMS offline players. So LMSs are building offline players, including us. Our Upside LMS offline player should be available early next year. So certainly that is going to help. Again, the tools for responsive app-based is Gomo is again a name, and then again Captivate, Fred, and PhoneGap. So some of the tools that you can use. So what are some of the challenges in using this approach is updates. So every time you update an app, you have to, if you're on the Apple platform, you have to go to iTunes and iStore and then apply for them to put in the new version, and they will review it and then they will approve it and they'll put it on, and then the downloads they'll have to download. So yes, so there is a bit of effort involved in updating apps, like I said, the challenges. So if let me just very quickly talk about Fred. Fred is our framework for responsive e-learning development. It's a framework that we've developed at the moment to, I guess, plug in all the deficiencies that are there in HTML5, 4, and the current development tools. It is not like a pure end-user tool. It does require technical skills. So essentially, what it is a bunch of highly evolved technical templates, which we use. But you do require some coding skills to use it. But that if you need more information, we have supply that. And I think that's where we finish. I think it's a very exciting journey we are on, and I think it's going to be one which is going to be challenging in terms of our budgets, challenging in terms of the skills that people have developed using tools for Flash. So that transition from the Flash world to the HTML5 world is going to be challenging. It's going to be challenging because people are going to build their own devices, and the BYOD approach, you've got very little control over the screen sizing operating system. So I guess you have to actually cater for all scenarios and situations. So I think it's a very challenging exercise, and we'll be happy to send you across some links on and information on Fred. But while we are doing that, if anybody has any questions, if you could type up in the QA box, that'll be fantastic, and we'll answer that. So yes, if you've got any questions, we'll wait for a couple of minutes. If you have any questions, needless to say, we've done a lot of work. In fact, we're one of the organizations that lead the charge when it comes to HTML5 content development and online learning and LMS. So we've already done a lot of thinking, and we've actually gone through the pain of helping customers move from Flash to HTML. So fairly well experienced, and that experience we've shared with the community through our blogs and through our white papers. So there's a lot of resources there, which if you just go to our website or request, there's one free ebook available, and you can see that's bit.ly.resp ebook. If you click that, you will get that ebook, and plus a lot more blogs and also white papers. So please go for it. And David, thank you very much. And yes, so David is saying very interesting, Jeevan, but no easy way forward, and was hoping to find a converter. Not there, David. I'm sure it'll come, but it's going to take some time. So I guess we just have to hold on to our horses for the time being and just do the best we can. If there's no other questions, I'll stay online, but this is where, and if you've got any questions, happy to answer them. I'll stay online for the next 5 minutes, but this is where we end our webinar. So thank you very much for everyone who has attended the webinar. I also thank the Upside team for kind of getting up quite early in India to come and start up this webinar. So yes, I'll be online, and this is where we finish. So if you want to leave, just close your browser, and that'll finish the session. Thank you, everyone.